Reading with your kids.
Hey, so great to see you. Come on in. Hi, my name is Jedley, and this is the Reading with Your Kids podcast. We are coming to you from the beautiful neighborhood of Reedville in the southwest corner of Boston, Massachusetts. We are starting 2020 off with a bang. We are so happy that you're with us. Please be sure to subscribe to the show on the iHeartRadio app, on Google Podcasts, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, wherever you find your podcast. We're welcoming back Alice Aspinall today as we celebrate the second edition of her book, Everyone Can Learn Math. As we get ready to celebrate Everyone Can Learn Math, we want you all to join us February 8th and 9th at the Chicago Kids Expo. That's right. Jedley's Totally Interactive Magic Circus and the Reading with Your Kids podcast will be making their way to the beautiful city of Chicago to celebrate Kids Expo. It's happening February 8th and 9th at Schaumburg Convention Center in Schaumburg, Illinois. This is going to be an amazing weekend of fun for your family, and we would love for you to join us. We're going to be creating an interactive experience for families to find out what it is like to be a guest on the podcast. We'll also be recording content for future episodes of the show. And, of course, Jedley's Totally Interactive Magic Circus will be taking the stage on Saturday and Sunday. You can come out and be part of all the magical fun. Check it out. We want to see you there. Chicago Kid Expo, February 8th and 9th, Schaumburg Convention Center, Schaumburg, Illinois. Joining us right now from right outside of Windsor in Ontario. I'm really excited to have. I love having guests back, especially when their books achieve so much success. Please welcome back to the show the author of Everyone Can Learn Math, Alice Aspinall. Alice, how are you?
I'm great, Jed. Thank you for having me back. How are you?
I am wonderful. It's been so much fun. You know, being the host of the show has introduced me to so many amazing authors. It's introduced me to this wonderfully supportive of community of authors, especially kidlit authors that are out there. And it's been really wonderful just seeing all the success that everyone can learn math has achieved. Tell us a little bit about the journey that you've had and where the book is right now.
Thank you, Jed. I think we last spoke about a year ago. Is that right?
That's right, yeah.
Yes. So at that time, Everyone Can Learn Math had recently been published, and I had published it. I had self-published through a professional company, and now just a few weeks ago, it was taken on by a publisher called EduMatch Books, and it's out in its second edition now through that publisher, and I'm really happy with how successful it's been, and that we're getting it into so many homes and getting our message of math positivity across to so many children. It makes me very happy to see how successful the book has become.
Now, I tell you, Matt, when I was a little kid and early in school, I loved math. It seemed to come really easy to me. But when I got up into high school and started with algebra, and it could have just been the fact that I wasn't a very motivated high school student. But algebra, geometry, physics, I didn't even try physics. That stuff became very intimidating to the point where I didn't even want to try it. What is it about math that can really freak a lot of people out?
Yeah, math has a way of creating anxiety for people, and often from a very young age, unfortunately. And I think sometimes it's engraved from messages from parents or older siblings or sometimes, unfortunately, even teachers. I hear the idea that there is a math brain or a math person, but there's a lot of research out there now that there is no such thing, and that everybody is capable of learning math, even high-level math, with some hard work and perseverance, that is. Mm-hmm. Like we have this misconception that as soon as it gets hard, then math is not my thing, when really we kind of need to work hard at it, like something like other things in life. When we encounter difficulty, we keep working at it, right? Mm-hmm. And unfortunately, people don't really do that with math. We just decide, oh, I'm not a math person, and then be done with it.
Yeah. I just want to share with you a really cute experience. I had my amazing niece is now a sophomore in high school, and she's in an AP physics class, and she loves it. But it's hard for her. It's really challenging for her. And she was having a very, very difficult time at the beginning of the year, and she became very frustrated. And I was asking her, how's it going? What's going on? I'm really curious to see what you're studying in physics. And it was to the point where she didn't even want to talk about it because it was just so frustrating for her. And
sad.
It was, but she was over the house, and I said, why don't you just, she's telling me she can't understand. I said, why don't you just read it out loud? And maybe there'd be something there can you help me with? I couldn't imagine what it could be, but just the process. She spent the next 90 minutes reading, I don't know if it was 2 or 3 chapters of her physics book, but just the fact that she was reading it aloud to somebody, and I may have helped her with understanding a couple of sentences, but it snapped for her. So just the process of reading it out loud, and maybe reading it out loud to me, it made a difference to her, and that was so wonderful. It was just, somebody who loved this and was frustrated by it. And I don't think she was ready to give up on it, but there was, that kind of thought kind of crossed through her mind, to have something so simple to make a big difference in her life. It was just heartwarming for me.
Yeah, I think that the message there is you as a caring adult in her life encouraged her to try again and to explain it to you instead of saying, well, I thought it was really hard too and I didn't like it. Mm-hmm. You didn't give her an out. So I think that's a big difference, right? Yeah. We want to encourage our children and have them believe that we believe they are capable of learning this high level math or physics. Mm-hmm. And that's what you did for her, which is really incredible. And that's what we need to do when our kids say things like, I can't do math or math is hard. Right. We need to, convince them that, yes, they can. With a little extra work, yes, they can.
Yes, yeah, we have a rule here. I tell my niece and my kids when they were younger, the rule was you can't use the word can't without following it with yet.
Absolutely. That's a superb growth mindset right there.
One of the things you mentioned was teaching, I guess a great way for us to help understand different concepts is trying to teach it to someone else.
Yes.
So talk a little bit about that, please.
Yes, I think there is research that suggests that when we explain it out loud to others, things happen in our brain that allow brain growth to occur, and we then gain further understanding. Like, I think teachers are supposed to be experts in their field, but the longer they teach a subject, the better they get at it and the more connections and understanding they have in that subject area because they are constantly explaining it out loud, and then your mind makes all of these connections. It's really good for you to be able to explain something to someone, even if you don't think you quite get it yet. If you explain it out loud to someone, it really helps you to understand better.
I know you're not a neuroscience or a scientist or anything like that, but you talk about connections and making connections in our brain. I think that's something that people don't understand, is that our brains are basically a series of these connections. And when we learn something, we're actually making these connections. But when, if we learn it one way and then we express the idea a different way, we're actually developing different connections. So now there's more connections around this thing that we're learning inside our brain. It's like we're building muscles in there.
Yes, you're right. Yeah, and it's not muscle. Like, we use that as it's a metaphor, right? It's not actually muscle, but that's the metaphor for what we're trying to say. The brain, in a way, is growing and becoming stronger when we make all of those connections. A lot of this research comes from the growth mindset from Carol Dweck, and then more specific to me, Mathematical Mindsets by Dr. Joe Bowler out of Stanford University has done a lot of research on this, on the brain connections.
So tell us how we as parents, now I was talking about my niece who's a sophomore in high school. I imagine a lot of parents who are listening are, dealing with their 3 and 4 and 5-year-olds who are just kind of dipping their toes into math. How can we really support them and really help them understand that they can do math?
I think the key with children at that age, at such a young age, is to make them see all of the math around them in their everyday lives, and that math is not this singular subject that they learn once they go into school. That's, I think, where the trouble begins, because students go to school and they see math as arithmetic calculations, and then, as we get older, algebra and whatnot. And if they could just from a young age be told, we are doing math right now, this is math. When you see shapes, when you see symmetry in nature and the spirals that exist in nature, and in the math, in fractions, in baking, and in cooking, and there's so much math everywhere around us. And if we could just explicitly tell our children that there is all of this math that we're using and seeing all of the time, then maybe when they go to school and they learn about math, they think, oh yeah, I've been doing math for a long time. Mm-hmm. This is no big deal.
Yeah. One of the things that I hear from people my age who maybe were frustrated math students themselves, but I've heard this from a lot of different folks. Why do we torture kids with algebra, with math? They don't need it anymore. They all have this thing in their pocket that they can they need to add something. They have this thing in their pocket they can take out and punch numbers into, and so it's just not necessary anymore.
Right. Well, I have two arguments for that statement. First, I think we need to know what our machines are doing and understand what our machines are doing so that we can clarify, make sure things are being done correctly. But even far more important than that is all of this math that we learn in school is strengthening our logic, reasoning, problem-solving skills. And that's really what we want to be left with when we leave high school and when we become young adults. We want to be good problem solvers. And so we may think we don't use algebra in our everyday lives, but we do. When you think, I'm doubling this recipe, how much do I need of this ingredient? We're doing ratios, and that in a sense is algebra. You're solving for an unknown. So I think we really do use algebra concepts far more than people think that we use them, just because we're not writing out an equation. Mm-hmm. We are using that problem solving that comes from algebra, and that's what we really want to be left with and have our students have when they forget all of the math skills, because they will inevitably forget the math if they're not using it constantly. But the problem solving is what's going to remain. And the best analogy that I hear for that argument is like a football player doesn't ever do squats during a game, but they do many repetitions of squats during practice because they're strengthening their muscles so that they can use the muscles in the real game. Mm-hmm.
And I was really amazed. I think it was a beloved football coach of mine. I was not a very good football player, but, he was talking to me and explaining that, when the quarterback is back there and he's getting ready to throw a pass and he's throwing a pass to a spot where the receiver is going to be, he may not be aware of it, but that's kind of calculus, figuring out what the
for sure. Yeah. Yes. And functions, like you imagine the trajectory path of a football is a parabolic curve. Like there's so much math in sports.
And I think that's for parents, there's a lot of ways. If we have a kid who's into sports, we have a kid who's into dance, or we have a kid that's into music, there's so many different ways to use that love, to use that passion to get them to also learn the other things that they need to learn, so you can take that kid who loves football and is a phenomenal talent and can throw the football, throw the basketball, or kick the soccer ball, and help them understand that, hey, this is geometry, what you're doing here, bending the soccer ball into the net. This is geometry, and that might be a way to spark their interest in something that they think that they can't do.
Absolutely, I agree. There are many ways to make mathematical connections into all sorts of our kids' extracurriculars, and so we should take those opportunities. I'm a big advocate for that.
So tell us a little bit about exactly what we're going to find when we open up Everyone Can Learn Math.
Everyone Can Learn Math is a children's picture book about a young girl named Amy who has basically given up on math. She has a really difficult math assignment that she is unable to do, so she just decides she's not going to do it because she's not a math person. And then she goes about her day, her activities, dance class, out on the playground, gym class, and starts to reflect and learn some lessons from her teachers and her peers that people are successful when they work really hard and practice something. And so she realizes that she needs to apply that same mindset to learning math, and that's what she does. And she's able to complete that assignment once she changes her attitude about how she's going to learn math.
And that's a great lesson that we can teach our kids. That whole idea of teaching our kids grit. It's not just teaching them to get up off the field when they get knocked down. It's about tackling those tough subjects in school.
Yes, definitely. Our children are lacking a lot of resilience, unfortunately, and so we need to teach that to them. We teach and model resilience.
Yeah, very important. Well, talk about, Alice, please, some ways that we talk about how we can read with our kids all the time. And of course, I mentioned how, my niece felt stronger and understood her physics more by reading it out loud. But what are some of the ways that we can math with our kids in our day-to-day lives?
Yes, I think there's a big connection between early literacy and early numeracy for our children. So in the same way that we read to kids early on, we want to be talking math with our kids from early on. So simple things in the infant years such as counting aloud to them, even before they understand what counting is, just counting, singing as you're counting. Shape sorters are a really good start because you're talking about the physical aspects of shapes and naming them. And then as they get older, you want to point out the mathematical concepts that you see around them, right? Like a window is a rectangle, and a door with windows has several rectangles in it. And then that can lead to arrays, and then an array will lead to multiplication. And so, one thing leads to another, but we really want to pick out the math that is around us that we see, because you can see shapes and symmetry and numbers and repetitive counting in a lot of our everyday things that we just walk by and don't think about.
Yeah, and I don't always make that conscious connection between shapes and math and problem solving.
Yes, right. And because I think we think math is just arithmetic, computations, and then algebra, and we forget about all the other different kinds of math, right? Math is in art quite a lot with our drawings and the concepts of the concept of thirds, or the Fibonacci sequence leads to the golden spiral, which is found in art a lot. So that all that geometry is a big part of math as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And even in my chosen field, magic, the number 3 is kind of magical. You can tell a joke kind of 3 times in different ways. Tell the same joke 3 different ways. You can't do 4. You can't do 4. That's too many. And 2 is just not quite enough. But 3 is that magic number.
Yeah, see, amazing. There's another math lesson for you. I didn't know that one. See, you're teaching me something.
It is, and it's funny because it's something I know, and it's something I know instinctively. But a lot of times when I'm writing things, I forget it, and thankfully, one of my kids will remind me, you did that too many times. No, take that one out. And yes. Tell us where if we're in the supermarket and we just want to help our kids, just start thinking math and getting them to feel confident in their math. They're maybe 6, 7, 8 years old and they're in the supermarket. So, what are some of the different ways that we can support them and give them some math confidence at the supermarket?
The supermarket's a great place to incorporate math. So if you want to do basic counting, you can have your child count out the items in the produce aisle. You want 5 apples or 7 bananas for the week, 1 for each day, for example. Have them count that out. If you're going to the deli and you're asking for a certain mass of lunch meat or cheese or whatever you're ordering, allow your child to order it. Have them estimate how much it's going to cost based on the price. So the price at a deli for lunch meat might say $1.99 per pound. I think that's a really low price, but and if you're getting 2 pounds, how much do you think that's going to cost us? Right, so we're estimating and we're using a unit rate in our estimation to get that estimated price. You can do price comparisons, which I think is maybe for older children, but still, I'm a big believer that our children can handle more than we think they can sometimes. So I'm not against introducing some more complex concepts when they're a bit younger. Price comparisons would be like, here are 2 different sized boxes of cereal. One costs $3.49 and the other one costs $4.99, and look at the weight that's inside of each box and try to estimate which one is the cheaper purchase, which one's the better buy, as we say.
And I think in doing these really kind of simple things with our kids, involving them in that way in the supermarket, not only is it giving them confidence in math and in getting them to think in ways that would give them better abilities to solve problems, I think we're also empowering them. And we're letting them know that we respect them and we respect the way that they think and we have confidence in them.
Yeah, you make a good point. We want to believe in our children and we want them to think we believe in them. That's really important because then they'll believe that they can do it, right? They, like, everything we say and do, they're watching and they will mimic. And so when you say things like, I could never do math or I never liked math, they're listening and then they're going to accept that for themselves later on too. And I don't think that we want that. Even if that's how we felt growing up, we don't want that math anxiety to be perpetuated onto our children. I don't think any parent wants that. And so we need to be very careful with the language that we use so that we're not doing that to our kids.
Yeah. And like you said a number of times here in the show, it's not just that, we don't want to do this just because we want our kids to grow up to be mathematicians or physicists, but it's just, this is a great way to help them develop problem-solving skills. And that's what our kids need. And they're going to be required to make these kind of decisions in their lives from a very early young age. They're going to be, kids are going to want them to take risky chances and get involved with dangerous substances at an ever younger age. And these, giving our kids the confidence, giving them these problem solving skills is going to do a lot in helping them make healthy choices later on.
I agree with you. It's creating the whole package. That's what we want. No one thinks all of our kids are going to become mathematicians, and we don't think that, and that's not what it has to be about. But we do want well-rounded children who can think well and not be afraid to tackle a problem.
Absolutely. Well, speaking of the whole package, we know that Everyone Can Learn Math is probably available on Amazon, but tell us where can we go online to learn more about you and to learn more about your book?
Yes, it is available on Amazon and most other online bookstores. You can find me at my website, everyonecanlearnmath.com, and there'll be links there for different places that you can find the book and purchase the book. I'm also on social media. Facebook page is at Everyone Can Learn Math, Instagram at Everyone Can Learn Math, and on Twitter at Everyone Can Math. So I'm all over, and I'm always posting. I try to post often ideas on how to get the math conversation going with your children, a photo with some math talk associated with it, or something that a child said, or a prompt for your children, so that hopefully if you see something similar, you might think, oh, I could spark a math conversation right now.
Yeah, I love that. I love talk math with our kids.
Yes.
Yes. We've had such a great time speaking to the author of Everyone Can Learn Math, Alice Aspinall. Alice, thanks so much for being here on the show. I can't wait to have you back next year to celebrate, what would that be, the second anniversary?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
That would be great.
Definitely. I look forward to it, Jed.
Please be sure to join us for the next edition of the Reading with Your Kids podcast. Our guest will be Lori Orlinsky. Lori is going to be here to celebrate her brand new book, and we're really excited about it. We caught up with Lori at the Chicago Toy and Games Fair and have a chance to find out all about this great book and give it a preview too. That's the next edition of the Reading with Your Kids podcast. We want to thank the folks who made today's show so very, very wonderful. Of course, we want to thank our guest, Alice Aspinall. Please be sure to check out Everyone Can Learn Math. And, of course, as much as we encourage you to read with your kids, we also want to encourage you to math with your kids and find different ways to talk about math and to help expose your kids to math and to help them feel more comfortable with math in our everyday lives. Also want to thank my producer, my amazing producer, Fatima Khan. Please be sure to check out her blog. She writes this beautiful blog for every episode of the show. You can find it at readingwithyourkids.com. I want to thank my beautiful wife for all of the support she gives me. And, of course, I want to thank you. Thank you so much for joining us today. And, as always, thank you so much for making the world a better place by reading with your kids. I'll be looking through the next edition of the Reading with Your Kids podcast.